The president was weakened today in more ways than Trump voters and probably anyone in the White House actually understands. Mitch McConnell turned the ship of the United States Senate around and started heading away from Donald Trump for the first time. When Donald Trump shut down the government, Mitch McConnell's position was he would not consider even bringing up a bill to a vote in the Senate if the president did not already approve of that bill while it was being negotiated.
We're not interested in having show votes here in the Senate. We're interested in bringing up something that the House has passed, 60 senators will support, and the president will sign.
And that is all over. The constitutional truth of the matter is that the president only has as much legislative power as Congress decides to let the president have. This week, Mitch McConnell decided to take his power back from President Trump. Mitch McConnell agreed to a bipartisan legislative package without President Trump's approval, and then Mitch McConnell scheduled that bill for a vote on the Senate floor without President Trump saying that he supported that bill. And only when even President Trump's people could see that the bill Mitch McConnell was bringing to the Senate floor was going to get over 80 votes, only then did Donald Trump let Mitch McConnell announce that Donald Trump supports it. It's a whole new ballgame in the United States Senate because of that procedure. Mitch McConnell decided he no longer needs Donald Trump's support to bring a bill to a vote, and that alone is a devastating blow to Trumpism in the United States Senate. On days like this, we need experienced political observers who can see the big picture in all of the individual maneuvers of the day, and we have that in our next guests. Joining us now is John Heilemann, national affairs analyst for NBC News and MSNBC. He is co-host and executive producer of Showtime's The Circus. Also with us, Rick Wilson. He's a Republican strategist and contributor to the Daily Beast. He's the author of the book, Everything Trump Touches Dies. John Heilemann, this is the end of the line for Donald Trump's wall, and tomorrow in the Rose Garden, he tries to turn the corner, apparently on the emergency idea.
Yes, he will. He often claims victory when he loses. He often changes the subject when he loses. He will try to do both tomorrow. But I do think it's super important what you just said, Lawrence, in the long arc of this presidency. You think about the past two years and 2 months. We have not seen, I believe, any instance, except for possibly the original passage of Russia sanctions that the Congress did over Donald Trump's objection. Until now, we've not seen the Congress assert itself, certainly not the Republicans in the Congress assert themselves and say, I'm sorry, we're done. The political consequences of sticking with you are too high, and so we were going to go about our business until exactly now. And I think that is a watershed moment in this presidency, because to me, it is the most important math calculation of all math calculations that every United States senator has to do. Does it cost more to stick with Trump, or does it cost more, or does it cost more to abandon Trump? And for 2 years and 2 months, the answer has been it would cost us more to abandon him. At this moment, on this issue, and potentially now on many more issues going forward, and some of great consequence and moment, including the existence of the Trump presidency, this will be the moment where Republican senators have figured out that there's a different math game in town, and that could be incredibly, incredibly bad news for President Trump.
Yeah, and Rick Wilson, we have the Washington Post report from the inside of this story leading up to where we are now, and they have the Republicans in the conference committee surrendering instantly on the Trump wall, not even attempting to get any kind of funding for that. That was just confirmed. That reporting in the Washington Post tonight was just confirmed by us, by one of the conferees, Congressman Pete Aguilar, that when the wall came up, the Republicans in the House and the Senate in that conference committee didn't even fight for it, didn't even make a request.
Right. Lawrence, as John said, they have reached an inflection point in the Senate particularly where they know they have a very big field coming up in 2020 in the Senate side. It's the bad year for Republicans in 2020 in the Senate, and they recognize the damage they were taking from the shutdown and the damage that they'll take from this emergency and the constant drama over the wall, which does not appeal to the majority of American voters, even to a meaningful fraction of American voters, is causing them this enormous political radiation that they're absorbing. And at some point in politics, everyone cuts bait, and everyone says, well, I want to save my seat. I want to save my own position here, and this guy is dragging us down. He's a boat anchor around our necks. And so they've decided, tonight at least, that they're going to show some spine. And I think that the reason that the president, who is desperate for any kind of fraction of an ability to claim a win on this, will go out tomorrow and basically in front of the cameras lie for half an hour and say, my beautiful, glorious wall is already 90% completed, and this is a great victory, and I can take this money from wherever I want. It's, of course, a fantasy, but, he is certainly a guy who is prone to fabulism. And so I think we're going to expect tomorrow a fairly pathetic whimper to end this entire wall drama.
So, John, Mitch McConnell said before the shutdown, he said emphatically, there will not be a shutdown. Right. And he said that because as Senate Majority Leader, he knew he had the power to prevent it.
All along.
But then when Donald Trump did the shutdown, Mitch McConnell went along with it.
Yes, he did.
Throughout the shutdown, senators were standing up there saying, you can bring a bill and we will pass it right now. It increasingly toward the end, McConnell was privately telling the White House there's 70 votes in the Senate at least right now, a veto override margin for anything that I would bring to reopen the government. Then Mitch McConnell says you shouldn't use emergency power. He says it publicly. I don't want any emergency power used here. Now Mitch McConnell goes out on the Senate floor today and says he supports the president's emergency power because that, for him, I believe, is the end game. The president will try to use the emergency power. He will be immediately stopped with an injunction in court, and then Mitch McConnell doesn't have to pay any attention.
Correct. It is for McConnell, again, a cost-free fig leaf for the president. If that's what it takes to make this all go away, Mitch McConnell can live with that. And I think that's exactly right. There's no question. There will be no national emergency. The courts will stop the president. And most Republicans, privately and in some cases publicly, think the national emergency is a bad idea. I do want to say, though, I think it's super important, and Rick said something that I am inclined to say at various times. They found their spine. They didn't find their spine. What they found was they're now using a different algorithm to calculate their self-interest. That's all it's ever about with these people is their self-interest. And so, to me, the reason this is significant is not about the shutdown. It's not about the wall. It's an answer to the question of people who have been asking us for 2 years. There's no way Trump will ever be impeached and convicted in the U.S. Senate because they have no guts, they have no spine. And I keep saying, it doesn't have anything to do with guts and spine. It has to do with when does the moment come when Republicans do a different math. And the math says we are free to leave Trump because if we stick with him, it costs us more. This is the first thing, an issue of policy, government funding, and immigration, where they have realized there's a different calculus. And I think that the important thing here is that this kind of thinking is the kind of thinking that leads them to challenge Trump on a variety of other things, again, not because of spine, but self-interest, and potentially to challenge him on the question of his entire presidency, because it's not going to be about spine or principle or caring about America. It's about them being able to keep their jobs.
We have already run through one commercial break on this breaking news. We're going to have to get to one now. John Heilemann, Rick Wilson, thank you both for joining us.